Nice sunny day, but it's actually cold. For the audio test today, I'm actually going to try this high pass filter on the actual mic that's recording my voice to see if I can tell a difference or not. I won't be using it for the ambient sound, obviously, but this should technically make the voice sound a lot more clear. And with that in mind, what did I read today? How about this one? Again, with a lot of news about war and stuff like that, there are various countries saying we don't sell it to certain countries, we don't intend to use it for war purposes and all that. Well, how about this one where it's talking how, I guess, places like China, I guess, is supplying people with a lot of drone tech in general. This one says, drone tech gives China an edge in Middle East arms sales, but Israel-Gaza war brings risk. China's advanced drone technology could be a stepping stone for its defense industry's outreach to the Middle East, analysts say, while also warning of hurdles ahead as the region becomes increasingly unstable following the Israel-Gaza war. More than 30 Chinese commercial and defense contractors showcased their products at last week's Dubai Air Show. These include their latest aerial vehicles and weapon systems, with arms producers focusing on unmanned aerial vehicles technology. State-owned China National Aero Technology Import and Export Corporation displayed its AR-2000 uncrewed aircraft system intentionally for the first time during the November 13th to 17th event. Imagine that, as usually you would assume, for example, it'd be commercial or recreational types of conventions where you want to sell to businesses, consumers, but in this case it's like military, like, hey, we know you're in a war, look at our product. Then again, when there's money to be made, I guess, you're going to see a lot of companies. And it says here, although the vehicle specifications remain confidential, the drone is known to have completed its maiden flight earlier this year, and despite it is still being in testing phase, the Chinese military has already placed an order for the UAS, according to Defense News. The version displayed in the airshow is said to be developed for ship-based operations, featuring short folding wings and large surveillance radar pod mounted under the nose. A VIP event before the airshow opened to the public reportedly featured a vehicle armed with short-range guided missiles. Now, the interesting thing is they do say the US still leads, I guess, the world when it comes to larger, more powerful weapons, I guess you could say, but I guess China has the advantage of being able to produce more at a cheaper rate, I guess. It says Costa Tigos, head mission systems and intelligence at global military intelligence company Janes, said while the US was still the leading weapons supplier in the region, China had considerable success in entering the Middle East and North Africa markets with increasing sales of advanced UAVs. The US remains the largest supplier of defense articles across the region in both numbers of deals and value, especially in areas such as combat and mission aircraft, air and missile defense, combat vehicles, and C-41, Tigos said. And with that, they also mentioned companies like DJI, who have on the record consistently said their items aren't meant for war and all that. It says James Lewis, a senior vice president and director of strategic technologies program at the Washington-based think tank Center for the Strategic and International Studies, said drones were a key element of future wars and China's dominance in the civil drone market, with companies such as DJI also gave it an edge in the military UAV market, saying the most advanced drones come from the US, but they are large, expensive, and too regulated. The drones being used in war are usually smaller and expendable. That's kind of an interesting thought there, because they mentioned too, it's too regulated. That's kind of the point I brought up before too. Even here, you regulate it so much, for example, it's so over the top, people can't actually innovate. And now you're basically dependent on, let's say, other countries' technology. And at the same time, you have other places that are like, oh, keep building it, make it, I don't know, cheap. You could argue it's not as reliable, but they're actually getting the experience, I guess, setting up the factories and all that. I mean, that's something that people don't think about in the long term too. It says drones for the commercial market are weaponized, and China's lead in the commercial drone market gives it an advantage. The thing to watch is what drones use for guidance. They are on the market and are preferred. Would you be concerned at all, again, because this kind of brings up that topic too, where certain places, I guess like the US, they say ban Chinese-made drones, for example, when it comes to official work and all that. Does this kind of change your perspective, or does it matter to you as a consumer, for example? It's whatever works. I would imagine for a lot of people that's the general mindset anyways, but interesting topic overall, I think, in so many avenues. And in terms of weaponizing, I guess, drones, this was kind of crazy. I saw this video where apparently it's an FPV kamikaze drone, And you can see, I guess, it being set up, putting some kind of bomb or some of that on it, and basically flying it to the soldiers. And then, as you would expect, it gets dropped on them. But would you consider this like a quote toy? I know a lot of people, they classify everything as the same thing. A small drone, a medium drone, a large drone, it doesn't matter, it can be weaponized. I mean, it's completely different in my opinion. You should be worried about stuff like this if it's about safety. People quote weaponizing them. I mean, there's a huge difference between someone doing this and, let's just say, I don't know, attaching a bottle of water or something like on a mountain where, oh, I need to send it to this guy up there like in a really safe way. Because there was more news of drone strikes in the war. Like this one says, Russia launches largest drone attack in Ukraine since start of invasion. Russia on Saturday morning launched its most intense drone attack on Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion in 2022, targeting the Ukrainian capital, military officials said. In total, Russia launched 75 Iranian-made Shahed drones against Ukraine, of which 74 were destroyed by air defenses. Ukraine's Air Force said. Kyiv was the main target, Ukrainian Air Force Commander Mykola Oschek wrote on the Telegram channel. The attack was the most massive air attack by drones on Kyiv, said Serhiy Popko, head of the Kyiv city administration. Lots of war still going on, lots of weapons, and companies making a lot of profit on it, I guess. Will it ever end in that case? And then I was reading this, where apparently locally here, they're saying the police might have a new contract and they might be one of the highest paid, which, as you can imagine, that generates mixed opinions depending on who you are. This one says Vancouver police to be the highest paid officers in Canada if new contract ratified. Starting Sunday, members of the Vancouver Police Union will begin voting on a new 2-year contract with an annual wage increase of 4.5%. If members vote to ratify, the contract will bring wages up to $121,988 for Vancouver Police Department constables with more than 5 years of experience, making them the highest paid constables in Canada. The new agreement would retroactively apply beginning in 2022 and ending on December 31st, 2024 if ratified. The VPD says the Vancouver Police Board, the City of Vancouver, and the Vancouver Police Union agreed on the terms, and ratification is the next step. So obviously the reason why that's generated controversy is because some people would argue there's good cops, there's bad cops and all that. Some people would think, oh, when you see the news, there's so much negativity at times where there's a, quote, crooked cop. At the same time, I guess it's not an easy job, correct? Going out there every single day, kind of risking your life and all that. At the same time, there are bad cops too. Well, how do you balance that, right? Because I know in some places, there's just not much law enforcement left because they're so restricted too in many ways. So why would someone want to do it? It's just to entice, I guess, more people to be in law enforcement. And one useful thing I actually overlooked I only discovered yesterday, because remember when my battery died on the action camera and I went to the smartphone? As I was editing it, I was like, holy cow, why does the sound seem like it's so loud all of a sudden, like it's going over just because it's on the phone? And apparently the reason is that the phone, if I'm recording the camera through that specifically, the mic input, it kind of filters it with its own levels. It was set at, for example, 0 dB on the phone. So even though the recorders and all that, they were transmitting -3, the phone was like, oh, I'll bump it up to 0. So that was something I overlooked. Usually when you use a camera, for example, with an external mic, you should set the camera audio itself, for example, really low, so it's picking up just the microphone. So that's something I wouldn't have actually realized unless I was doing all this practicing and all that. Okay, now as an example, I'm just going to put it on how it was before. It was here at 0. Okay, and for real-time comparison, I'm gonna bring it back down to -9. There we go. Let's see how that sounds. So for the heck of it, I'll leave it at -3 right now on the phone just to see what it's like, because that's what I have the actual receiver transmitting it out to. I think there's usually some protests and stuff during the weekends anyways. How about we go check it out to see if I can record some sound there.
Traditionally, they were woven out of two things. Out of a dog that we used to raise called the Salish Woolly. And the Salish Woolly was systematically killed off by colonial settlers. It was done because we tell our stories in our blankets, because we keep our teachings alive in our blankets. So as a weaver, one of the things I realized is that when I weave blankets,
So just testing to see if you can hear me talk, and as well with that in the background. So one ambient and one regular mic with a lav.
Traditionally, they were woven out of two things. Out of a dog that we used to raise called the Salish Woolly. And the Salish Woolly was systematically killed off by colonial settlers. It was done because we tell our stories in our blankets, because we keep our teachings alive in our blankets. So as a weaver, one of the things I realized is that when I weave blankets, part of what I'm doing is I'm having a conversation with
Well, with that in the background. So one ambient and one regular mic.
Traditionally, they were woven out of two things. Out of a dog that we used to raise called the Salish Woolly. And the Salish Woolly was systematically killed off by colonial settlers. It was done because we tell our stories in our blankets, because we keep our teachings alive in our blankets. So as a weaver, one of the things I realized is that when I weave blankets,
So just testing to see if you can that in the background. So one ambient and one regular mic with a lav. I'm surprised if this mic can actually pick that up. This is not like a shotgun mic or anything. Out of curiosity, this will be a test for the high pass filters. First, this is what it sounds like without any of that stuff on. See you guys later.